I am coming to you, funnily enough, from the very first time I've ever filmed on my new set. The fact that I'm in a different location, probably not that much of a shock to you, because where in the world is Sean this week? Well, I'm at home, but it's a different one than what I filmed in before. I've made too much of a point of this, but really, I just wanted to be very excited about it. I hope that you've been having a lovely week since I saw you last, and I hope that you've been enjoying just the kind of shock of content that we've had coming out over the last while. We're quite happy about how it's going. We will be bringing another quiz to you within the next day and a half. It's really hard to figure things out because, like, I film these maybe a little bit before you see them. So, I mean, just want to say, we have some seriously cool stuff coming. Thank you to everyone who took part in the last quiz, which was about the USS Voyager. And there was a couple of tough questions in there, but everyone who is enjoying them and having fun, that's the main thing. We have another one coming. You know what? I'm just going to tease it right away. It's on the Wrath of Khan. Okay? So you know what to do your study for, do the Wrath of Khan, and you're going to do well in this quiz. Before we get to that quiz, however, we have Season 5, Episode 8 of Star Trek Lower Decks to go through. So, grab your gourd, and let's get to it. Upper Decks is the title of this episode, and I am going to start with a lovely up for the fact that they are mutilating gourds, because anyone who knows me knows that Halloween is my favourite holiday, which is why when it gets name dropped by Tendi a moment later, I'm giving this episode another up. Maybe it's because I'm Irish, and you know, it has its roots in Irish and Celtic mythology, and it's pronounced Samhain. Sorry, it's not even in the episode, it's just such a pet peeve of mine. It is not Samhain, it is Samhain. Moving on with the episode. Before I jump into what is undoubtedly one of the most important segments that we do here on this channel, I want to give a preemptive down. And the reason I'm calling it a preemptive down is because it's sort of a general feeling from this episode. And it's also, in large ways, not the episode's fault. We are 3 episodes from the finale of Lower Decks, and not just the season. And this feels like such a low stakes episode to have this close to the end. But I also feel, to be very fair, that I feel that more so because of where it's placed in the season. And I know it's a bit too early for postmortems, but that's going to be a symptom of season 5 overall. I think that they didn't know that this was going to be the last season going in, and so a few episodes, unfortunately, they might have done well in seasons 4, seasons 3, but because it's the final season, they've sort of not hit as much as they could have. So it is a down, and it is a down for this episode, but it's also a down for how we're all feeling about Lower Decks coming to an end. Because overall, I mean, you might be like, oh, Jesus, Sean didn't like this episode at all. I actually really did, and I have so many nice things to say about this episode, but I would be remiss if I didn't lead with that. So now that that's said, and that's out of the way, we're going to Beard Watch. Beard Watch. 'Tis a fine beard. A fine Oh, sorry, I was talking about my own. This week's Beard Watch, it's coming in quite nicely. We've got 4 individual hairs on either side, bringing us to a total of 8. We've got those mutton chops as well. We've a now full goatee as well, with a little bit of a thing there. You're looking good, Boimler. I'm giving you a compliment on your beard, Boimler. I hope you're paying attention. This whole scene is just so much fun because it sets up, of course, where we're going to get to as the episode goes on, that the Lower Deckers are just having a nice chill day. This is exemplified by Mariner coming off her shift, where she talks about, oh, like, you know, she got trapped in a painting because someone was using holographic tech and they all got sucked in. She got to ride a rainbow and up. But that does sound amazing. I wish I was on that. You know, that sounds like maybe we're going to, maybe for a Lower Decks long trek, this could be the tease for it. Because that sounds like it was a lot of fun and I would like to go and visit there someday. I do love the camaraderie again that you do feel between these Lower Deckers, and I'm gonna miss that. But, to be nicely fair, they're not the only crew members aboard this ship who have good camaraderie. Because the eponymous Upper Decks crew also have good camaraderie. Before we get there though, anyone who knows me as well would know that I would be lying if I didn't give an immediate up to V'ger being carved into that pumpkin. Listen, I have so much to say about carving pumpkins, and yeah, stick around for cetacean observations, because you might see a nice full spread of reasons as to why. Up in the conference room, you have Freeman walks in with Stevens. Stevens, who's become something of her valet, of her PA, you know, he's in charge of her schedule, particularly today. And we get a sort of a roundup as to what's been going on the ship. Now, first of all, we get an explanation as to that thing we saw in the trailer, which is Ensign Barnes, who has sort of we find out has both evolved and devolved, so she has become a slightly telepathic human who's also afraid of a naked flame. Of course. You know, how did they calm her down? Well, T'Ana just thought of a candle. Up. Around this table as well, we see other little bits and bobs of news. For example, T'Ana gets a little bit of a dressing down for the fact that, you know, she's not been very good at managing people's pain, to which she goes, "Who squealed?" Up. We also get a bit of a bitchy Miggly Mo as well, which is unusual for him, when they're talking about the Clickets and how they can't handle compliments, and they're like, ugh, what's their problem now? I didn't realise how much I liked bitchy Miggly Mo, but I'm here for it. However, there was one line in this scene that almost became the latinum up of the episode. Okay, like this is how close it came. And that's when Billups is giving his update as to the fact that he has topped up the amount of corduroy rocks in the ceiling panels. And Ransom complains about how they always fall out and hit him in the head and everything. Why are Starfleet ships built out of rocks? Up. And the fact that they take a second to try and explain it away, the fact that Billups goes, well, actually, they're really good at conducting, no, stop, and they cut him off. Which is like, no, we're not going to explain the fact that these ships are built out of rocks. They just are. They have been since back in the day. They still are now. It's been addressed on screen this close to being the latinum up of the episode, but I loved this gag so much. Shax has to excuse himself when he starts seeing apparitions in the room, something we will come back to, and also a surprisingly dark part of this episode. But what we do also get in this scene is the Cerritos Upper Decks chant. Strong and brave, wise and true, that's what makes a Cerritos crew. Up. Shax finds himself lost in a memory where he seems to be facing off against himself. He is there, he is praying, he's got his Bajora Mandala, and he is brought back to a battle during the occupation. And it's the Battle of Tempasa. Now again, cetacean observation, stick around, I'll give you a bit more context as to what this is, but in an episode that is very generally quite light. I mean, we're herding space cows at one point or that. Yes, I know they're bagoon, okay? Don't bite my head off, you clicky cricket. This is a super dark inclusion in this episode because this has a super dark context to it as well. And as Shax is there trying to defend other Bajorans against Cardassians, some of whom have put an explosive in an artifact, he's being reminded of the worst days of his life. And I mean, like, on the one hand, it makes perfect sense that Shax would be remembering this on a day-to-day, but on the other hand is that, oh God, Shax is still remembering this on the day-to-day. The poor man. It is a sort of a, not a confused up, but it's an up that I want to give him a hug. I'm sorry for not explaining that very well, but I was actually quite moved by this part of the episode. One thing that I always wonder about when, you start any episode of Star Trek and it's, the captain's log, chief medical officer's log, first officer's log, any of them, it's sort of assumed that, you have to do daily logs. We've talked about this in Lower Decks before with Boimler, but surely there's not something to talk about all the time. Like, there's just days where stuff doesn't happen, which is why then I found it so funny that Billups' log is about, this morning I had a bagel and it gave me a tummy ache, but I feel better now. Bye! Up. Now this leads into the most catastrophic disaster that can happen to an engineer. An indicator light has gone out behind a panel. And that sounds like a joke, but as the episode plays out, we see this scene of Billups rappelling with Miranda up these lights, and it's just like, oh my god, this is amazing. Why is everything retrofitted? And for God's sake, go to a starbase. But of course, you can't do that in the middle of space, and it's all very exciting, and engineers get to live. I need to calm down. I've had too much coffee. We go to sickbay, where it's the chief medical officer's log, and T'Ana is still not happy about some constructive criticism she got that's got her in a real mood, and just up. However, I'm giving a down to T'Ana in this scene as well, because when Nurse Westlake, who by the way I love taking up Nurse Westlake, comes in having refilled all the hypersprays. Now, T'Ana being crouchy is one thing, but knocking those hypersprays off the table and like smashing them on the floor, no, that down is staying. That's rude. I've got a couple of pet peeves, and one of them is rudeness. I don't do rudeness, okay? So yeah. But no, Westlake is able to, I love that line, no one else can handle you, honey. I love their, like, why have we waited 4.5 seasons, nearly 5 full seasons, to see T'Ana and Westlake really interact like this? Love it. Absolutely love it. Like, a couple of my favorite moments of the episode are to do with that pairing. And the fact then that T'Ana's there, like, discussing what the problem was with Westlake, and Westlake's like, well, yeah, you don't manage other people's pain. That is a legitimate criticism. And she's like, well, don't they check the pain chart? I feel good, other, up. Also, never use that as a pain chart. That is not a good pain chart. But yeah, he's just like, well, you know, you can't judge everyone against your pain level. And she's just like, you're right, we should upgrade the pain chart. And he's like, that's not quite what I meant. And she's like, no, we're gonna do this. And so she strips down, she jumps into the bio bed, she lies down, she gets herself tied down, and she says, come on, Nurse Westlake, rearrange my guts. While T'Ana and Westlake's relationship goes to a different level, if you like, we are going to go and take a visit to the mess hall, where Barnes is doing her sousaphone recital. Which, I'm not going to lie, I really like the rhythm of it. And I'm really glad the fact that it wasn't impeded at all by her protruding brow. Up. Now, you might be wondering, what's Ransom been doing for all this time? You might also not have been wondering that. Really, I don't know. You do you. I support you in whatever you're wondering. I was wondering, however, so we went down to the shuttle bay, where he's dealing with Delta Shift and Beta Shift, who are trying to corral a bagoon into the cargo bay. They're being observed by a professor who is quite familiar to those of us who enjoyed the episodes Homefront and Paradise Lost. He is trying to study the bagoon, and particularly their, cloaking ability. Alien animals who can cloak. Where have we seen that before? Ransom's way of trying to get the two teams, who do not like each other, to work together is by corralling them, I like that word, corral, with stories of other experiences he's had and other teams that he's worked with. I'm not gonna lie, they don't really help as stories, and they don't really inspire very much. So out of almost boredom, the teams begin to work. The one thing that really made me smile is when one of Beta Shift, or Delta Shift, not gonna lie, I can't remember which one, uses a tractor beam to pull, accidentally, an asteroid into the cargo bay, and Ransom gets out of the way with a Ransom roll. Up. It's not quite up there with Riker, but it's not far off it. This causes an accident, which means the professor gets a bit of a bump in the noggin, which means he has to get out of the shuttle bay. Freeman has still been carrying on through her day. She went to one of her crew's fertility ceremonies, which becomes a very tentacled affair when, congratulations, it's a life form! She also then goes to see Winger Bingston Jr.'s spoken word play. I just love his name. Also love the fact that he's the one responsible for the iconic Starbase 80, damn. It's just nice to see him again. Oh, go on, take it up. Now, after all this, she's walking the hallways and manages to bump into this professor who turns around and reveals a very non-professorish eye. Why the eye would be professorish, I don't know. Coffee. And we have a little bit of a mandible hanging out as well, because of course it isn't a professor of that alien species. It's a clicket, and it's been... Oh my god, did anybody else during this scene think, that's an eyeball falling on the floor? This is like, where is this gore coming from? It's ridiculous and like really over the top. And also, you remember I said Halloween was my favorite holiday? I kind of have a weird, I kind of like the gore. All right, take a nap. Yeah, I will speak to a therapist about it, all right? Perhaps the funniest thing of all of this is when this Clicket invader tries to remind Freeman that the Clickets and the Starfleet have actually faced off before. And Freeman's like, sounds familiar, I don't know. Because yes, they very much have faced off before. It was one of the stories being told in the earlier episode Veritas that was told from Mariner's point of view. You remember where they're all on trial and they have to speak through the Horn of Truth and it's all about finding maps and cloaking technology and everything? Yeah, the Clickets were in that. Remember them? Be honest. Well anyway, they're not very happy that they haven't been remembered either, which is one of the reasons they've no problem infiltrating the Cerritos. It's not their main goal. Their main goal is to harvest the Bagoon, but, you know, you'll remember them this time. You hope. There's so many different things happening around the ship here that really you'd be forgiven for going, well, hang on, maybe we'll concentrate on this, or maybe we'll concentrate on this, but no. Billups is still dealing with his emergency down in engineering. In fact, there was a whole AI golem that was provided by Binars that tried to eat him, and then the next thing, Miranda's using an axe to smash its head open, and then he's trapped in a tube full of coolant, and I mean, this is clearly Spock and the Wrath of Khan, but still, you know, he's like, this is how engineers want to go. On the job. And she's like, we're not having this. And she starts to smash the thing with an axe. And he's like, no, that's what he's been using in an emergency. She goes, what's your definition of an emergency? Up. Because at some point somebody had to call him on it, right? Right. Well, anyway, they get him out and they're able to go on and take on the next thing. I don't think I have the stamina to work in Billups engineering. I really don't. In the shuttle bay, still trying to corral. I'm sorry, I feel like I've just learned that word today. But anyway, still trying to get all the Bagoon together, Delta and Beta shifts do start working together. After another story from Ransom, which is where he eventually just works out in front of them, and then he finds himself so pooped he has to have a little bit of a nap. Have you ever had a manager so ineffectual that you ended up working better in spite of them? Thankfully, not in this role. Hey, Chris, you're lovely. But no, I'm serious, not in this role. But yes, I have had that before. And there's an actual logic to Ransom's motives here, which is weird, I'm not going to lie, but kind of works. And they do end up working together. And I mean, kind of up for his method. You've got Delta and Beta end up effectively going, you know, we don't like each other, but here we are. When the rest of the infiltrators really start to show themselves on board the Cerritos, you have firefights in various rooms, but you have one of my favorite moments is where the Clickets foolishly try and attack Freeman and Stevens and Barnes, who's armed with her sousaphone, which I want to apologize to every sousaphone player watching this right now. I actually didn't know was a real instrument until this week. I googled it, it is real, it's exactly what it looks like in the episode, which also means I presume in real life a sousaphone can take and reflect disruptor fire back on the person firing at them, which means it's one of the most effective instruments in all of music. The door to what we learn is sickbay opens. The Clicket turns around and fires a disruptor at Dr. Anna point blank, and she looks up smiling because she has spent this whole episode trying to up the pain chart. Well, the Clicket's like, that was set to kill. To which she goes, so am I. Up, Latinum up. The delivery is perfect. Gillian Wegman is so perfect in this episode that delivery alone was like, the fact that beat out rocks in the ceiling for Latinum up is how much I enjoyed that moment. She tears that Clicket into pieces. Again, I did speak about how much I love the gore. I'm hearing it now. I'm hearing it. I'm concerned too. Let's move on. We're still back. So Shax has been dealing with this whole, paths warring against each other. It's an astral projection. It doesn't seem to be a Borhaya because I suppose Shax did die, so it could be. But yeah, okay, right. In this instant, it seems to be just like, the inner demons. And it forces him to confront all of the Cardassians that Shax has killed. And we have a really kind of like, ooh, moment when, it's like a part of Shax wants him to feel guilty about his actions during the occupation, whereas the more waking part of Shax feels no guilt, because, the want you to feel guilty part is like, look at all these poor Cardassian warriors that you've killed, whereas the waking Shax goes, they're not warriors, they were occupiers, and he just sets about killing them again. And again, super dark part of this episode, but in this segment they did what DS9 did over 7 years, the Bajoran struggle against the Cardassian occupiers, and kind of showing people that no matter how much of a nice face you put on an occupation, it's still an occupation and you gotta fight back. So yeah, fair play, taken up. This leads to effectively a convergence of the separate storylines, because when you have Ransom's Clickett is now fighting with Freeman in the hallway, and you got Ta'ana slicing Clickets to pieces, and Shax in his astral version of himself starts fighting what seems to be waking up Cardassians, but in the real world he's actually just beating the snot out of a bunch of Clickets and welcomes one of them to the bear pack. Now I want a hug like that. But yeah, he's dealing with it. The only way to stop any of this is when Freeman is speaking to the Clickett commander over the view screen on the bridge, and she finally remembers how to defeat the Clickets by telling them what a good job they're doing. Because if there's one thing a Clickett can't take, it's a compliment. And we get, congratulations on your whole vibe. You are some superior infiltrators. You're doing a great job. At the end of the day, you're a captain doing the best to look out for his crew, and I respect that. Up. This causes the Clickets enough pain that they beam out of there and they warp out of there and they're done. And Freeman just goes, what a bunch of weirdos. Because there is nothing more fun than calling people who are weird, weird. Up. Things are starting to wrap up at this point. You've got Billups and Miranda, who are not on a first name basis, only at the point of death. Just kind of seeing everything is back on track, everything's all right. And Cadet, not Wesley, walks up and says, Commander Billups, there's an indicator light out over the door. Would you be able to help me? To which Billups just goes, let's do this. Taken up. But also, I want to give a special up to, out of nowhere comes this really sweet moment. There's a reason that Freeman has been so concerned about her schedule all day. It's because her anniversary is that day, and she wanted to have a call with Admiral Alonso Freeman. And she feels like, oh, that's it, I kind of missed it. There's a meeting on the holodeck I've got to get to. You can't miss these meetings with your crew. So when Zoe turns up on the ship, the fact that he's flown out from Earth to be there to surprise her, taken up. That was just lovely. I really enjoyed that. Which leads us to our final scene in the mess hall. You have Shax agrees to go to therapy because Miggly Mo tells him it will give him better weapons to fight in the war, which he is delighted about. And then in his exuberance, he slams the table, which spills a hot chowder onto Ta'ana. She finally feels that. And knowing that, she goes, ugh, fine, we'll stock up on pain meds. And Nurse Westlake just goes, there's a good kitty. And she purrs. It's so inappropriate, but listen, a lot of their conversation has been quite inappropriate today, so I'm giving it up. And then, of course, you have the lower deckers walking. You got Rutherford, Tendi, Tillin, Boimler, and Mariner walk in, and they're completely oblivious to whatever's been going on, because nothing ever happens on the ship if they're not the star of the story. So when they sit down and Tendi says, well, actually, I saw your dad walking around, and then she's like, no, you didn't. And then Rutherford's like, no, I really saw Admiral Freeman walking around. She's like, no, you didn't. And Tillin goes, I saw Admiral Freeman and the captain get trapped in a painting. That is correct. I have made a joke at your expense. Boom. Up. Now, would you please join me at Citation Observations? I'm so cold, next time I'm turning the heating on first. The planet that the Bagoon are orbiting is an ice planet with rings, very similar to places like Andoria. Rutherford carves the Cerritos and V'ger into certain pumpkins. Now, There's a connection between Lower Decks and pumpkins, and it's not what you might think, because it's not that we've seen pumpkins being carved on screen. It's actually that in the real world, one of the most amazing pieces of artwork I have ever seen was carved into the side of a pumpkin. And yes, I'm very much talking about Jill Curry's pumpkin of the Boimler spread. Do you know what? Jill, I'm giving you an up. You know, it wasn't in the episode, I don't care. That's an up for Jill for that amazing pumpkin. There you go, it was a long time coming, and I hope you enjoyed it. Janeway, Kirk, and Cisco all get name drops in this episode. The creator must join with V'ger. Love it. The Zerta pathogen seems like at least a play on Barclay's T-cell syndrome, or Barclay's protomorphosis syndrome from the episode Genesis. The Clickets previously appeared in the episode Veritas, where they were going to provide a map of the Romulan neutral zone. There's a whole big, thing about they can't take a compliment, which of course plays over into this episode. Rocks in the ceiling and the bridge, just... oh my god. The professor who arrives to study the Bagoon is or at least appears to be, a Grazerite. We previously saw a Grazerite as Jarish Inyo, the president of the Federation, in the episodes Homefront and Paradise Lost. The Bagoon have a natural cloaking ability, which is very close to the Itronok that was seen in the Discovery episode Jinal, these insectoid creatures that inhabit the planet of Trill. Hold on. Isn't that Towel Guy? Ransom does the Riker pose during one of his stories, and he talks about eating a Jumja fruit, which we know as being the star of Jumja sticks and other Bajoran delicacies, which is quite nice because at that moment the story cuts to Shax. I see you. The Battle of Tempasa. Now this is from the episode Ties of Blood and Water, the episode where Tekeni Gamor comes to DS9. In that we get a callback to, we get a flashback, if you like, to Kira Nerese's childhood and the death of her father, Kira Taban. Now they talk about at the settlement, a Cardassian heavy weapons unit with the 3rd Assault Group and the 9th Order. All of this Ties of Blood and Water, because that was who Kira went to fight, which is why she missed the death of her father. As Shax's Pa fights with itself, the music there very reminiscent of James Horner's score for Spock in The Wrath of Khan and The Search for Spock. When Nurse Westlake is refilling the hypos, he says it's to guard against viruses that make the crew sing or something. Now, while of course it wasn't a virus that made them sing, how can that not be a reference to Subspace Rhapsody? Nurse Westlake himself, of course, being a namesake of Chris Westlake, who writes the music for Star Trek Lower Decks. Barnes's recital, of course, we've seen music recitals. Voyager with Harry Kim and his clarinet. Wonderful to see that again. And then in The Next Generation, where we see several recitals as well. Chief O'Brien plays the cello. Let's never forget that. Winger Bingston Jr.'s spoken word play references that he was ashamed when he was discovered doing what he was doing on the holodeck, which could be referenced to any number of Barclay episodes and other ones as well, don't get me wrong. He talks about being out of phase, like Ro and Geordi from the episode The Next Phase. And in Act 7 of his play, he discusses the O'Birth years. If we go back to the episode The Stars at Night, T'Ana complains that she didn't spend 7 years on an O-berth just to be knocked back out of the CMO position. Suddenly awake clapping Stevens, of course Riker in the episode Schisms during Ode to Cat. The AI defense golem came from some Binars. And of course golems have turned up in Star Trek more and more since Star Trek Picard. And AI defense, of course, we saw in Star Trek Picard's 3rd season. That AI defense being in the form of a Crow, Moriarty, basically Data. Billup's entire almost death scene, very reminiscent of Spock in the chamber in Wrath of Khan. He talks about deuterium as well. Delta and Beta shifts getting a name drop once again. Shax's trying to tell himself to face his victims. Well, of course, are they victims when they are occupiers? Very philosophical debate going on there. Although it's not an Easter egg, I forgot to mention it. They've got an ear tag on one of the Bagoon. I just thought that was so cute. It's like, stop calling them cows, and yet we're going to treat them like cows. I love it. It's so silly. Date night in Paris. I mean, maybe this is a stretch, but I'm thinking immediately of Picard and Janet Mannheim in We'll Always Have Paris. Shax is drinking from a DS9 Rack-to-Genome mug, and that brings us up to time. So thank you very much everyone for watching along. You are awesome, you are wonderful. What did you think of this episode? Now, my one down about where the episode is aside, I think this is going to become one that's going to become quite rewatchable. you know, because there's no real stakes and it is quite fun. What do you think? Let us know in the comments below. Please don't forget to keep checking out all the videos. As I say, we've got that Wrath of Khan quiz coming up, so good luck in that one, and do let us know how you get on. If you can join us live, fantastic. If not, keep playing because they're not going anywhere. We have interviews being released. We have all sorts of fun stuff coming. So please make sure that you are subscribed as well. I have been Sean. Please make sure that you're following us on the various socials, at TrekCulture, at Sean Ferrick, at Chris Edit as well. Send him lots of congratulations because it makes him feel awkward and it's lots of fun for us. You are awesome and wonderful. Live long and prosper, and I will see you for the penultimate episode of Star Trek Lower Decks next week. Thank you very much.